I'm American Joker. We have a lot coming up in the next 30 minutes, including updates on the Israel war, politics and more charges in America, and the latest in sports and entertainment. Stay tuned. Let's start with the headlines. Israeli troops mistakenly killed 3 hostages during Gaza raid after misidentifying them as threats. US says it expects Israel to conduct a thorough investigation into that incident. French President Emmanuel Macron says he is ready to table peace talks with the Russian President Vladimir Putin as Moscow resumes offensive in Kiev. Pakistan's poll body announces election schedule for 2024. The poll process will begin on the 19th of December, with polling on February 8th next year. Donald Trump's former attorney Rudy Giuliani has been ordered to pay $148 million over false vote fraud claims and defamation of 2 Georgia election workers. And Rohit Sharma's 10-year reign as Mumbai Indians captain comes to an end. All-rounder Hardik Pandya replaces Sharma as skipper for the 2024 IPL season. Let's start with the latest development in the ongoing Israel-Hamas war. Israeli army says it has mistakenly killed 3 hostages that were held by Hamas in Gaza. The army says 3 hostages were identified as a threat as troops fired at them during combat.
לעדכן את הציבור בבשורה קשה וכואבת על אירוע שהתרחש מוקדם יותר היום. במהלך הקרבות בסג'איה כוח צה"ל זיהה בשוגג 3 ישראלים חטופים כאיום. כתוצאה מכך, הכוח ירה לעברם והם נהרגו.
The 3 hostages were abducted by Hamas during its October 7th attack on multiple Israeli communities. Expressing deep remorse over that incident, the IDF says it bears responsibility for everything that happened and that immediate lessons have been learned as it continues its onslaught in Gaza. IDF's spokesperson said that the army believes that these hostages either escaped or were abandoned by militants who held them captive, and they are further investigating to ascertain more details. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has called the incident unbearable tragedy. The news has infuriated many Israelis who are protesting near the Israeli Ministry of Defense in Tel Aviv. These include relatives of hostages still held by Hamas. The US has also reacted and has called the incident heartbreaking. White House says it expects Israel to conduct a thorough investigation. US National Security Council spokesperson John Kirby also reacted to that incident. Israel has been facing mounting international pressure and isolation for its offensive that has killed thousands so far. The country also acknowledged that nearly 1/5 of its soldiers have been killed so far in the war, and they've died due to friendly fires or other accidents. Even though the IDF claims of making significant advancements, it is also paying a quote-unquote heavy price. Let's move on now. Russia has shot down a series of Ukrainian drones in two border regions. According to Moscow's defense ministry, 26 drones were shot over the Crimean Peninsula in just over 2 hours. As per officials, 6 of these drones that were targeting installations on Russian territory were brought down in the Kursk region. Moscow and its outskirts have also been targets of Ukrainian drone attacks. Meanwhile, French President Emmanuel Macron has said that he is still open to dialogue with his counterpart Vladimir Putin if it helps creating a sustainable peace between Ukraine and Russia.
Et si le président Poutine a des propositions sérieuses, une volonté de réengager un dialogue qui permet de bâtir la paix respectueuse du droit international, la France sera toujours une puissance qui aidera et qui ne ménagera pas ses efforts pour obtenir un résultat. Voilà. Comme nous l'avons fait d'ailleurs durant toutes les années qui ont précédé le conflit, en étant une des puissances de médiation des accords de Minsk dans le format dit Normandie.
Macron and Putin enjoyed a good working relationship before Russia invaded its neighbor in 2022. The diplomatic and personal links deteriorated badly as the war dragged on. Earlier this year, President Macron also weighed in the possibility of kicking Putin out of France's highest Medal of Honor. European leaders have pledged to find a way to provide aid to Ukraine after Hungary vetoed a $55 billion financial aid. On Friday, 26 national leaders of the European Union took the historic step of agreeing to start accession negotiations with Ukraine. But they were unable to go ahead following resistance from Hungary's Prime Minister Viktor Orban to revamp the bloc's budget to Ukraine. Orban, who is an avid supporter of the Russian president, has been against Ukraine's accession in the EU since the start of the war. The leaders will reconvene for an emergency meeting next year to try to settle the deal, after intense discussions which took place at a 2-day meeting in Brussels. Towards the end of the summit, during a press conference, French President Emmanuel Macron said that the Hungarian Prime Minister must not be allowed to take EU hostage. He also added that he believes Orban would show responsibility.
Je vais être très simple. Ce n'est pas moi qui ai déclenché la guerre de manière unilatérale et en rompant les traités que j'avais décidés, et ce n'est pas la France qui a décidé de mener des crimes de guerre dans le nord de l'Ukraine, rendant quasiment impossible les discussions. Bon, faut être sérieux. Et donc, moi j'ai une... Enfin, simple, je n'ai pas changé de numéro.
After Hungary's Prime Minister abruptly left the room during the discussions of Ukraine's joining European Union, reacting to the same, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz said that the action sends a strong signal towards the Kremlin. He also mentioned that he was confident that a formal agreement among EU states will be reached next year.
Das gibt es in vielen demokratischen Prozessen, dass man sich manchmal hilft und sagt, ich bin wirklich nicht einverstanden, aber ich will das jetzt hier nicht aufhalten. Und genau diese Entscheidung habe ich dem ungarischen Ministerpräsidenten nahegelegt und er hat das für sich als ein mögliches Vorgehen aufgegriffen. Das ist jetzt nichts, was man jedes Mal machen sollte. Wir sollten schon meistens dazu kommen, dass wir miteinander entscheiden und uns eben zusammenbringen.
Hours after Pakistan's Supreme Court ruling, the Election Commission of Pakistan has issued the election schedule for the general polls set to take place on February 8th next year. The election program also applies to reserved seats for women and non-Muslims in the national and 4 provincial assemblies of Punjab, Sindh, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and Balochistan. According to a notification published by the Election Commission, the public notice will be issued by the returning officer, person in charge of the elections in each constituency on December 19th. The dates for filing nominations with the returning officer are scheduled from December 20th to 22nd. The names of the nominated candidates will be published on December 23rd, and the last date for withdrawing one's candidature is January 12th. The ECP said election symbols will be allotted to political parties on January 13th, with polls set for February 8th next year. Additionally, the last date of filling of separate priority list for seats reserved for women and non-Muslims before the returning officers is December 22nd. According to an official, all arrangements have been made for free and fair elections after completing tasks like hearing representations against delimitation and publishing the final list of constituency delimitation in time. This comes after the ECP had decided to resume training for the ROs and district returning officers. Earlier, the High Court had passed an order on petition, that is, on a petition submitted by the PTI or Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, putting on hold a training session for the returning officers. The PTI's petition argued that the officers should come instead from the judiciary.
What happens next will be really interesting for the fact that Pakistan has now officially entered election mode, and in fact, ahead of that schedule being announced, the constitutional provision says that anyone who wants to contest election cannot be a power or a stakeholder or a power holder, somebody in office. So in the run-up to that, the caretaker Interior Minister Sarfaraz Bukti, just ahead of the schedule being announced, has resigned from his post, which basically paves way for him to contest elections. And now, as I said, with the schedule being out, the focus will be now on campaigning and to the ticket allotment for different candidates by different parties, so that ahead of the elections they're all set. And then for the big day as well, for the 8th of February, people come out to vote for their respective parties, so that the parties who are going on and ahead with the elections, they can definitely go on and aspire to form their own government. Yes.
After the momentous success of the Chandrayaan-3 mission, India is gearing up to fulfill its next tranche of space missions. To bring you up to speed with what's ahead, here's an account of India's space ambitions.
Space, the final frontier. Over the last century, mankind has been steadily uncovering its deepest secrets. Humanity has placed objects in the Earth's orbit. It has sent people to the moon, but all that was in the 1960s and 1970s. Now there is newfound excitement in space exploration, with the International Space Station now in its 25th year, expected to go out of commission by 2030. Nations are in a race to put up their own space stations. China's space agency is in an advanced stage of operations with its Tiangong, or Palace in the Sky. Now India is also joining this 21st century space race, with Indian Space Agency ISRO lining up 3 crucial missions. The first is Chandrayaan-4. The next is setting up India's space station called Bharatiya Antariksha Station, and lastly, the Gaganyaan mission that will send Indians to space. For India's space agency ISRO, the recent Chandrayaan-3 was a historic success. The spacecraft successfully made a soft landing near the south pole of the moon. Since then, India joined hands with the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency, and over the next 4 years it aims to bring back samples from the lunar surface with its Chandrayaan-4 mission. Its second mission is getting up India's very own space station named Bharatiya Antariksha Station. ISRO is working on developing an inflatable habitat module in which astronauts can walk around and conduct experiments. The space agency is also developing technologies to refuel other satellites in space. An ISRO servicer module will be able to use robotic arms to maintain the modules and even replace them. The first module is expected to be launched in 2028. For all this, ISRO is designing a next-generation launch vehicle with the capacity to carry 16 to 25-ton payloads to low Earth orbit. The third ISRO mission is the Gaganyaan mission, India's human spaceflight program, currently under development. It will launch Indian astronauts into low Earth orbit, where they will stay for approximately a week. Russia's space agency Roscosmos has trained Indian Air Force pilots for this mission. All this will bring ISRO to its final and most ambitious program, landing an Indian on the lunar surface. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
Many conspiracy theories have added to the mystery surrounding the Bermuda Triangle, and now recent scientific findings have added another layer to the puzzle. Here's a report.
Oceans cover over 70% of our planet. They're constantly changing, and their changes affect not only marine life, but also hold far-reaching consequences for all of us. Something startling is happening in the Atlantic Ocean, in the heart of the mysterious Bermuda Triangle, where ships and planes seemingly vanish without trace. The Bermuda Triangle, also known as the Devil's Triangle, is a loosely defined region in the western part of the North Atlantic Ocean. The water that envelops this archipelago is undergoing rapid changes. Latest data suggests that not only is the water temperature rising here at an accelerated pace, but oxygen levels are also fast dropping, causing concern and prompting deeper analysis by experts. Since 1983, scientists have been collecting monthly samples of the water from Bermuda. This extensive data collection has become critical in unraveling a complex web of factors contributing to the peculiar nature of Bermuda Triangle. Adding to the intrigue is the fact that its water is becoming saltier and more acidic. The warming trend in the Atlantic Ocean around Bermuda defies conventional explanations. The unexpected temperature rise also raises questions about the impact on its marine life and weather patterns. As scientists continue to investigate shifting dynamics of the Bermuda Triangle, the world is waiting to see what secrets it holds. Bureau Report WION, World is One.
Let's talk business now. In a year where a large portion of the tech industry has resorted to cost cuts, startups have been severely impacted. Investors were ready to finance the expansion of fledgling firms at any cost during the pandemic boom. Now that fresh financing rounds have all but vanished, budget cutbacks are the norm of the day.
Startups face a grim holiday season and a new year as layoffs and closures mount. According to job tracker layoffs.fii, almost 250,000 employees at tech firms of all sizes were let go this year. This comes after more than 1,000 businesses let go over 16,000 employees last year. There were significant job cuts at industry giants like Google and Meta, but hundreds of employees left smaller businesses that were experiencing their first downturn. According to stock management company Carta, more than 500 businesses shut down in 2023. Many of those that survived are laying off employees and searching for other sources of funding. From the irrational exuberance of the most recent tech boom, the tone has shifted. Employees at startups, particularly engineers, were nonchalant when the last round of layoffs struck in 2020. Back then, they knew they would quickly find another job. Today, the industry has become less hospitable. Job losses often concentrate in the months of December and January as businesses prepare their budgets for the year ahead. The whiplash of fortunes has been jarring for some founders. Even companies that raised huge checks shut down this year. Other startups sold themselves at fire sale prices even after layoffs. If it's impossible to raise money, some startups may see a more limited upside to staying in business. With funding tight, the growing enabled by VC funding can feel increasingly out of reach. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
On Wild DNA Sports, the Indian women's cricket team is closing in on a massive win over England after a topsy-turvy second day of the one-off test in Navi, Mumbai. 19 wickets fell, with India already 478 ahead. Dipti Sharma's vigil ended on 67 after India started the day at 410 for 7. The innings lasted just 10 overs and a bit as India folded for an impressive 428. Renuka Singh struck early to send back Sophia Dunkley, and England were in trouble when captain Heather Knight fell for 11. Tammy Beaumont and Nat Siver Brunt steadied the ship with a 51-run stand for the third wicket. Beaumont was run out for 10, but a 39-run stand between Siver Brunt and Danny Watt allowed a semblance of normalcy to creep in. The introduction of Dipti Sharma triggered a massive collapse and England were bowled out within 10 overs. Sharma took 5 for 7 in 5.5 over spell. Siver Brunt top scored with 59 and was the lone bright spark in the innings, which folded on 136. Harmanpreet Kaur opted against enforcing the follow-on despite a 292-run lead. Her batters scored at over 4.5 runs, an over to rub further salt into England's wounds. Kaur was unbeaten on 44 and India had reached 182 for 6 when stumps were called.
It's time. The end of second day's play.
Time now for Wild DNA Entertainment. The gospel music world is mourning the loss of Pedro Henrique, a Brazilian singer who died on stage during a live performance. Henrique was singing his hit song Vai Ser Tão Lindo at a religious event that was being broadcast online from a concert hall in Feira de Santana, a city in northeastern Brazil. Henrique was quickly taken to the nearby clinic where he was pronounced dead. John Krasinski is all set to release his upcoming action animated comedy If. Ryan Reynolds and Steve Carell feature in the lead roles. If follows a father-daughter duo who discovers the ability to see people's imaginary friends who have been abandoned by the kids they helped. The movie is expected to release next year. The Unusual World of Hawkins, Indiana, came alive in London. The popular Netflix series made its debut at a stage play. Named Stranger Things, The First Shadow, the play takes place in 1959, 2 decades before the period explored in the TV show. It was produced by Matt and Ross Duffer, the brothers who created the series. Netflix is working to turn Stranger Things into a long-running franchise. In addition to the stage play, the company has greenlit an animated spin-off series. Let's now take a look at how countries are coping with the advancing winter season across the globe. Begin in China, Beijing, where domestic and international tourists braved biting winds and freezing cold to visit the Great Wall in Badaling. Temperatures have plunged in China's capital Beijing over the past few days, bringing the city's first snowfall of the winter season. The snow-covered Summer Palace in Beijing is drawing a large number of tourists. The Summer Palace has China's largest imperial garden and among the most noted classical gardens in the world. Visitors dressed in hanfu posed for photos and enjoyed snow at the Summer Palace. More than a dozen frozen trees fell and blocked a road in South Korea after a cold wave hit the country's northern Gangwon province. Rescue workers had to remove 13 trees on the road. Korea Meteorological Administration has issued a heavy snowfall warning in Gangwon province as they forecast a cold wave and more snow over the weekend. Blizzards swept across Russia, carpeting Moscow in one of the biggest snowfalls in decades. There was chaos on major roads where truck drivers battled with over 20 centimeters of snow and strong winds. According to meteorologists, the cyclone brought more than a day of constant blizzards to the Russian capital, the strongest snowstorms to hit Moscow in 60 years. And that's the latest on this episode of Wild DNA, the weekend edition with me, Eric Njoka. Thank you very much for watching. Do stay with us. This is WION Wild is One.
से लड़ता नहीं, उन्हें कहा जाता।